Hey there, thanks for joining us on the Chief Executive Aviator. I'm Simon Turner, your host, and if you're wondering what we're all about, well, we're pilots who happen to run businesses, or maybe we're business people who happen to fly. Either way, we've figured out that flying gives us a serious edge. Every week, I sit down with another pilot entrepreneur or executive who's discovered that their plane isn't just some cool ride, it's actually a secret weapon for growing their business. We're talking real stories about landing deals and actual landings, expanding markets, and yes, still making it home in time for dinner. Whether you're already flying for business or you're just dreaming about it, you're going to hear some pretty amazing stories about how aviation changes the trajectory of lives and businesses every day. So get your pre-flight done. We've got a great conversation headed your way. All right, welcome to the Chief Executive Aviator. We've got Nick Huber here, who's known as the Sweaty Startup on X or formerly Twitter. And Nick, really great to have you here. Thanks for joining me this morning.
Simon, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to talking planes with you. And most people know you as the Sweaty Startup on Twitter or Expert Troll. You do a great job. I love it. It's very fun to watch. But I know you've also got a passion for aviation and you use it in your business. What kind of first sparked your interest in flying?
Hour and 40-minute trip in traffic to the Atlanta airport. I realized quickly that the amount of travel that I do for business, I either needed to move to a major city or get a small plane. Those were my options because, I can live in Athens, Georgia, and I can have a phenomenal quality of life, and I can have a very nice house for $500,000, or I can live in Atlanta and have that same house for, $2.5 million, and the private school is $40,000 a year and everything around me costs more. The quality of life is not as good. So, I started to do some basic math on what it would cost to own a small plane. And it was cheaper to own a plane and live in Athens than not own a plane and live in Atlanta.
Yeah. That's a really good calculation. I've never actually done the numbers myself, but we had a similar kind of realization here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's very low cost of living. You can live in a $10 million Atlanta house for $1 million kind of thing. And you just mentioned before the show we were talking, it's the center of the country. It's easy to kind of get everywhere. And we had similar kind of thoughts to you, is like, hey, we can go, and the carrying cost of a $3 million home is kind of like spending money on a plane too. So
absolutely. Tulsa is the one place in America that you can get to any city in a Phenom 300 without stopping for fuel.
That is an awesome stat, and we actually have a Phenom pilot coming on in a couple of weeks. So
it's my dream airplane. I'm not there yet, but it's a phenomenal airplane.
It is. It is just such a beautiful airplane. Got to make sure you can fit in the cockpit, but it's a very, very good beast. But You've got a lot of businesses, in real estate, in service. When did you sort of like make the realization, hey, we can make a plane work as part of these kind of business ventures? And maybe walk us through the process that you went through to actually find an aircraft, pick an aircraft, and then finally actually purchase it.
Yeah, I'm pretty risk averse when it comes to finance. I was making a couple $100,000 a month for over a year. And I realized at that point that, hey, if I don't fly this thing, it's going to cost me $5,000 a month, and if I do fly it a lot, it's going to cost me $30,000 a month. Like, this is doable for me, and it's a vision jet, serious vision. I had to have more than enough money to not finance it. I didn't finance it. I wrote a check for a fourth of it, which was almost $1 million still, and a brand new vision.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have a great management company in Chattanooga that makes their money on the day rate of the pilot. Mm-hmm. When I fly, it's reasonable, and when it sits, it's very cheap.
Nice. And do you base it out of Athens or do you base it out of Chattanooga and then?
Yeah, it's a 25-minute flight to Athens. I do have that dead leg to pick me up and drop me off because my partners are there. So it made sense. It was kind of tough for me to find 3 other partners and access to a plane in Athens. And also the wait list on a Vision was almost 3 years. So I caught up with a couple guys who were at the end of the wait list about to buy one. So it was kind of just everything lined up. I think the PC-12 would have been a better airplane for me. Because it can haul more people, it can haul my family, more weight, but it's slower, so it is really handy when I'm doing these long hauls to New York to have that extra 40, 50 knots, but it works out really good.
Nice, I just actually had 2 friends that kind of bought into a Pilatus partnership right at the end of their 3-year waiting period. So these guys,
PC-12s are unbelievable airplanes. I think it is the most spectacular airplane that there is, really, with the short takeoff, the weight that it can carry. The problem is they're more expensive than the Vision.
Totally.
They're pricey.
Yeah, I just did a podcast with John Zimmerman, who owns Sporties, which is sort of I guess, the biggest online pilot shop. And then they have a big flight school, and he's a phenomenal leader, great business person, but also a PC-12 pilot. And he always talks about compromises in aviation which you have to make picking a plane, and he said that the PC-12 is you make the least compromises. You have to compromise a bit on speed, but you can if you can fit it in the cabin, you can pretty much haul it, and it'll fly pretty much anywhere, land on anything, all that sort of stuff. And
yeah, the Vision, I can't take 4 grown men on a golf trip in the Vision jet.
Yeah,
you can take 6 grown men and golf clubs and bags in a PC-12.
Yeah, it's we did a trip relatively recently in one where we had 5 guys in total, and all camping gear, mountain biking gear, fishing gear. I mean, it was loaded to the absolute hilt. There was stuff on our laps basically, and it was fine. We were still way under a max gross. So, and we landed on a dirt strip too, which was
unbelievable,
kind of crazy,
unbelievable.
So it also, I mean, is that an ultimate goal for you to get something? I mean, you said the Phenom, but would you ultimately upgrade to something like a PC-12?
No, I think I can make do without carrying buddies around with me. I have three young kids who all in plus the dog is 110 pounds, and my wife weighs 120 pounds.
Yeah.
So we can do a 2.5-hour run easy
Nice.
in the Vision. That can get me to Bahamas, top of Maine.
Nice.
Can't quite make it to Colorado for a summer trip in one go, but it works really well for us.
Nice. And yeah, 2.5 hours. I've got 2 young kids as well, and 2.5 hours is about as long as they'll sit in the back of the plane without complaining too much and needing to go to the toilet. Tell me a little bit about kind of like how having the jets kind of transformed your approach to business travel. Has it made you do it more? Talk me through that kind of the thoughts when you kind of going to put together a business trip.
Yeah, so if I was making a little bit more money, I'd be using it a little bit more. I'll say that, because it is still like to make a round trip to New York, because it's got to drop me off, it's got to fly back, and then I'm there for a couple of days.
Yeah.
It's $15,000 to $20,000 cost. So that's not insignificant for one business trip. It's $10,000 to go to Houston for the day to meet a CEO. Done that. So the cost is pretty significant, but man, yes, it is something that I just look at as a cost of living in Athens, and I make it happen when I need to be somewhere for business.
Yep.
And we have, the great thing is our management company has 2 Visions and 3 pilots. So when mine's in the shop, I use theirs. There's also 3 PC-12s in the fleet, and those PC-12 owners love using my Vision. So if I do need a PC-12, if I got extra weight, or again, my plane is in the shop, they love trading hours with me. So it works out really, really, really well. I think having a phenomenal management company to back me in my plane has been amazing.
Yeah, I would say.
I'm also happy to kind of talk through if people would be interested in the breakout of expenses to actually buy it. If you guys want to hear that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, let's go through that, because a lot of people, try to buy a plane themselves, and when you're buying a single engine piston and even a sort of lower cost turbine, you can do it, but it becomes a challenge when you start to run into the jet world, or the 10,000 pound sort of PC-12 or any of the bigger turbines. So talk us through the dollars and cents when it comes to actually making the purchase, and then how that management works for you, and maybe carry some of the burden of managing the day-to-day with the aircraft.
Yeah, so it was 3.65 out the door, and then we bought 300 hours of the wing-to-wing for $540 an hour.
Yep.
So that was another $150K. A couple other random costs make it, let's say, $4 million out the door, maybe a little less, right? My 1/4 share, 25%, I wired $925,000 at closing. Then the management company takes ownership, and they charge us. So the wing-to-wing includes all the maintenance. We still have to pay to fly it back and forth to Knoxville to get its service done. But hangar is $5,000 a month split by 4 guys, and that's about it. So then the management company, how do they make their money? The daily pilot rate. They charge me $1,250 a day for a pilot.
Yep.
They pay the pilot $400 or $500, whatever it is, and that's their profit. So when the planes are flying, they're making money.
Yep.
It's taken. We've owned the plane a year and 3 months, and it's taken that long to get we're very close, but still not gotten our charter.
Oh, really?
which is just the speed at which the FAA moves is
Oh,
insane. But yeah, it's been so if I'm not flying my plane, it's $2,000 out the door a
yep.
month. But last year, it came time to buy another 500 hours of wing to wing, and it was you got to wire 75 grand to the
Yeah.
to the LLC.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I guess it's kind of as you say, the price to pay to live in a place like Athens, and you're probably going to spend it somewhere else if you're not doing that. But also, it gives you sort of the ultimate freedom. And before we signed up to do the podcast here with you, you kindly sent me the book that you've been working on, and from the amount that I've read, it's an awesome story and gives some really, really amazing insight and guidance to people that probably would have never thought about starting a business, running a business, building a great business, even from a place like Athens, and just the freedom that ultimately gives you if you're able to generate success and wealth. And I guess on that kind of line of thinking, how do you think about freedom when it comes to using the jet and flying? I mean, having a PJ is probably like the ultimate, sense of true freedom and sign of success. But maybe talk to me about the freedom that it gives you.
yeah, I mean, there is nothing better than so we had a death in the family, for example. I'm 7-hour drive away because we also chose to live in an area that's great to live in, but not close to family. A lot of people struggle with that. I text my pilot the next morning at 8 a.m. The plane is sitting there. We're in the plane and we're in my parents' kitchen with them 12 hours after my grandmother passed away. And it was absolutely zero stress. Like leave the house at 7:30 a.m., walk in the kitchen, a 7-hour drive away at 10 a.m. That's just it's a time machine, really. Like I literally would have had to either drive to Atlanta, which is 2 hours, wait an hour, get on the plane, fly for an hour, get off the plane, drive an hour and a half to my home farm in southern Indiana to be with my family. So yeah, it's totally unbelievable. Same goes for business. Like we need to see a property to make a deal with an owner.
Yep.
We're there. We can be there like right away. We need to close an executive hire, and they're in Houston, and our team's in Houston. We can get on the plane and we can be there by not like 2 p.m.
Yep.
or get up at 4 a.m. Like we get up at our normal time, take our kids to school, and we're walking in the board meeting in Houston at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Unbelievable freedom.
Absolutely. And I mean, you talk about dropping the kids off, and in the book, you actually talk a lot about work-life balance and how important that is, and how, the type of business that you build is very important in enabling that, and the location and that sort of thing. Talk to me about kind of other experiences where aviation has allowed you to have a much better work-life balance.
Work-life balance, I'm home by dinner,
Yeah.
and I get to drop my kids off at school, which wasn't possible before. I'd be getting a driver to pick me up, or I'd leave the house at 4 a.m. from Atlanta. It would mess up, a whole night of sleep. I would feel like crap that night, and I would not get home until 11 p.m. if it was a day trip.
Yep.
So it's really all about it turns a full day or 2 days into one 8-hour work shift.
Yep.
Which allows me to see my kids and be home and
totally
not feel like crap.
Yeah, and how do you put a value on that? I wish I could call this podcast Home for Dinner, because every single guest that I've had on the podcast that flies or uses aviation in their business in some way, that seems to be the theme is, hey, I can be at the dinner table at 6 p.m. And if I had flown through, on a commercial flight, who knows, I'll probably be delayed till midnight or delayed till the next day or that sort of thing. And as you say, I have to get up, crack of dawn, be at the airport 2 or 3 hours before. But, if you're flying, even if you're flying yourself, like yesterday, I had meetings in Bentonville, took my kids to school, did all my normal morning stuff, left at 9:30, had a bunch of meetings over in Bentonville, was back by 3, had a meeting here in Tulsa, and, I was making dinner at 5:30 for my kids, kind of thing. So
Yep, it's a time machine.
Yeah, totally.
I guess a question I have for you, and so my book is really kind of a call out on what entrepreneurship is painted to the media. Because you walk around town and on the streets, you say, hey, what does an entrepreneur mean to you, just to a random person?
Yep.
They're going to say Shark Tank. They're going to say new ideas. They're going to say raising venture capital. They're going to talk about Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates. But those aren't the people flying private jets.
No.
The people flying private jets are the ones who own a regional waste management company. They own an HVAC business.
Yep.
They own 6 branches of a quick service restaurant. They own 2 Honda dealerships. They own 4 or 5 oil wells. These, I tell this all the time. Like, okay, you're an entrepreneur. You want to make money. There's 2 ways to go. There's the social media way. There's the Shark Tank way. There's the sexy way.
Yep.
Silicon Valley walking around in sweatpants. Or there's the, hey, let's look at what real normal people in my town who have the nicest houses, go to the nice country club, have the nice beach house in Hilton Head, and have a PC-12 sitting in Athens.
Yep.
None of them raise venture capital.
Absolutely. Yeah. I will say in my pilot group, we've got about 10 of us in a kind of, text group, and we fly together a lot and stuff like that. None of them are tech entrepreneurs. Most of them run the most boring, businesses. One sells siding for houses and has one of the most successful siding businesses here in Oklahoma. And he's like, I'm redneck rich. He's come from like absolutely nothing, and he's got 4 planes and that sort of thing. Another one's a mortgage broker who's just very good at running his mortgage broking business, and it's very simple. Like, he's like, I don't do anything special other than just pick up the phone and get the deals closed for my clients, and that's it. And then we've got another one who runs an asphalting company.
Yep.
Just they lay driveways all day. Another one who manufactures steel tubes. Just really boring kind of stuff, but they all fly.
This is what my book is. It's how to find an opportunity like that, how to think about business, how to manage, how to hire, how to delegate. The key, the unique thing about all of the people you just mentioned, their idea is not what got them where they are. Their execution is.
Absolutely.
They were good salespeople. They were good leaders. They're charismatic. They could make good decisions.
Yep.
They could hire. They could fire. They could delegate. They got better at solving problems.
Yep.
They weren't too anxious, but they weren't too arrogant either. They had that balance of humility and confidence. These are all the things that I talk about in my book, and I tell, 40, 50 stories just like the ones you mentioned.
Yeah, I love to hear that. And that's actually something, one of the inspirations to start this podcast and another business in aviation that I'm working on is exactly those stories that you talk about. Is there's so many people that just have figured out how to take a very simple thing, do it well, do it often, get better and better over a period of time, and they've made a very successful business out of it. And you don't have to overcomplicate it. A lot of people, again, think that you have to go build a Facebook, or I have to go have some really, really novel idea. But there's some guys chopping a tree down at my house this afternoon, and he's charging $12,000 to take a tree down. And that's it.
Goodness.
And it's like, and that was the cheapest quote that we had. I mean, it's a complicated.
If that guy is good at, delegating, he can get people, he can find people who can cut the tree down. Then he can find people to manage the person to cut the tree down. Then he can have 5 crews, 6 crews, and then he's in 2 cities.
Yeah.
Then 3 or 4 years later, he's got a Phenom 300 sitting at the airport.
Yeah, exactly. And in terms of, you talk about delegation there and managing people and that sort of thing. So let's talk about talent. And you make mention of finding great people and getting great people on X. Have you had any uses from an aviation perspective for your team, or for going to close a great hire or that sort of thing?
I haven't let anybody in my company fly it yet. It's in the future maybe, but we're all remote. Like my head of finance is in Boston. My property manager is in Ohio, head of property management. So we are spread out. But my partner and I have made meetings with the airplane.
Yep.
We have went to see potential executive hires in the airplane.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, the key to business is finding the right people, and you got to sell them. You got to convince them that your company is going to provide a better something for them, whether it be earning, opportunity, fun, quality of life, something.
Yep, absolutely. And in terms of your business, obviously you've got a bunch of service businesses. You've got somewhere that you raised a lot of money for last year to buy, which is essentially recruiting people overseas, as all sorts of jobs, within a business, which is awesome. We leverage them in my business as well. In terms of your businesses, one of them you often need to be somewhere very quickly to close a deal, which is real estate. And I have been a part of a real estate deal in the storage side of things with someone here that in Tulsa. And we flew out to a site in Kansas to try to close a deal quickly and got the deal. Have you used the jet yet to make a quick close on a deal because it's highly competitive or that sort of thing?
Not yet, no. And I actually don't even mess with billing my individual entities for jet time.
Yeah.
I don't think that's fair to my investors. If I want the convenience of getting somewhere faster, my investors shouldn't have to pay $9,000 extra for a deal for me to do that. So I kind of have a holding company, my media company, that I run all my business trips through, also run my personal trips, and I pay personally for those, just because it's not like I'm very high audit risk, and it's not worth the risk to try to deduct my Colorado summer trip with my family, to my entity. So
Totally.
yeah, I'm pretty careful about it. But also I've had the plane for a year and 3 months, and we've closed on one deal, and it was about an hour and a half drive away. So I drove. I haven't yet used it to close a quick deal.
No worries. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure in the future that'll come into play. But I think that's a really good philosophy with, particularly in your situation where you've got a lot of different businesses, you've got a lot of investors, that sort of thing. It can sometimes be hard to justify spending a lot of money on aircraft. A lot of the people that we talk to on this show have their own aircraft. They're 100% owner in their business or majority owner, that sort of thing. It's a little bit easier to justify. But that's a really good philosophy to sort of think of. It's actually your convenience versus necessarily the business, and as the businesses grow and that sort of thing, I'm sure it'll become more possible to do that sort of stuff.
If I were an investor, like this is a touchy subject that's kind of important, so we might as well talk about it. If I were an investor and we were buying a $1 or $2 million deal, and my GP, my general partner who was putting the deal together, flew private to see that deal, and all of a sudden we see a $15,000 expense on the management company books for that deal that I as an investor pay for, I wouldn't be happy about that at all. We're not operating at the scale. Like, now look, if there's a $100 million multifamily deal, yes, okay, that makes perfect sense, and maybe it can be justified. But I don't really believe in, at least for these small deals.
You told me that you've started on your journey of learning to fly, and one day you'd love to fly the Vision Jet and then maybe the Phenom 300 at some stage. But you told me you also maybe had a little bit of an interesting experience on your second ever flight. So maybe talk us through your thought process on becoming a pilot, and then what the learning experience has been so far.
Yeah, I think look, I love aviation. I would love the freedom to be able to go and get in an airplane that's sitting in Athens whenever I want. So I was first interested in the way more approachable planes, the Pipers, the Bonanzas. In the $200,000 to $350,000 range. It's crazy because 5 years ago they were $150,000 planes. But I hired a guy to help me try to find a Bonanza, and I started taking lessons. And I realized real quick that I have a shitload going on. And when I need to make a meeting, whether it's just not feasible for me to worry about VFR or flying around storms in an airplane that goes 190 miles an hour, or 240 if you're lucky in a Bonanza, depending on winds. So, but I was taking lessons, and I was in a 1964 Cessna 172. And first 3 lessons were amazing. I was into it. I was loving it. I studied it a lot. I was practicing talking to air traffic control, all these things. But one day there's a 15 knot crosswind, and the instructor doesn't tell me. It was gusts from 5 to 15, and we take off, and a gust hits, and the whole airplane slides to the side. I don't think it was a dangerous situation by any means, but it scared the living shit out of me. We get up to 4,000 feet, and we're starting to do practice routines and working on stuff. And he tells me a story that the other one in his fleet, the other plane, the throttle cable broke the day before, and they landed it. He's like, "See that field down there? That's where they landed the other plane yesterday." And I'm like, "Hold on, what?" He's like, "Yeah, the throttle cable broke, and they landed it right there. Fixed the throttle cable, and he took off out of that field." I'm like, "Okay, well, that sounds great, but wasn't that plane flying at night home from, like, I watched Flight Radar. That plane was flying home at night yesterday, 2 days before that from Hilton Head. What happens if that happens at night? You're dead. Like, okay, maybe you can land on a road and somebody else is dead. Maybe you're okay. Maybe you can find a field." And I just didn't the pilot just had no, like, he wouldn't reconcile the fact that, hey, if that happens, the flight earlier,
Yeah, it would have been.
the pilot's dead. So I made the decision right then that it's either going to be a SR-22
Yep.
or I'm going to pay somebody else to do this. And like over the course of that time, two of my businesses really started to grow a lot, and I started making a lot more money over those 4 or 5 months.
Yep.
And I decided to, do it the right way.
Yeah. I mean, certainly having someone fly you, for now is a great way to do it. And then as you get to a point where you've got
and I had a lot going on. Like I just bought the company.
Yep.
I had, I'm still involved in these businesses, having a blast. I think there will be a point in my career, absolutely, when I'm not that busy.
Yeah.
I'm not buying a, $52 million business and raising $20 million and, running a real estate private equity company and also growing a real estate services firm that's exploding, and I'm putting a lot of time there.
Yep.
There's going to be a point in time where, because entrepreneurship, it really comes in waves. Like there's years where you really bust it and work your butt off, and then there's years when things are slow, like, frankly, and you just got to sit back and wait, and time does its thing because you have a good business, you have good people, it's blocking and tackling. Now that time will come, and maybe my son will be interested in aviation, and maybe we'll buy a SR-22 and fly, and then it's a really easy trip from an SR-22 to a Vision. So
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great path for you, and one that's certainly well trodden. Again, a lot of my friends in my pilot group here do exactly that, and they learn to fly in a Cirrus for that reason.
If you're flying at night and there's a problem with your piston airplane, you survive an SR-22. You don't survive in a Cessna.
Yeah, or it becomes a lot harder to survive. That's certainly for sure.
And I have between a lot of my missions are right over the Smoky Mountains.
Yeah, and also in your area, super populated too. So it's the likelihood of a field is definitely a lot lower.
The topo out in Oklahoma is a lot better for night landings. And
yeah. Although still, it's not great, and a lot of us avoid flying at night, or reduce the amount of risk there, or spend a lot of time and effort and money on making sure the plane is as de-risked as possible from a maintenance standpoint. It's never great to hear stories of issues like that in a flight school with old planes that maybe are getting the 100-hour inspections fudged instead of actually done properly. Because as you said, I have a lot of
friends in Oklahoma and Texas, and almost all of them know more than one entrepreneur who has passed away in a single engine airplane.
Yeah, I know of a couple that have done it. Often, the decisions that entrepreneurs make are, I got to get to this meeting, I've got to get to a different city the night before for a dinner or whatever it is, or they just think they can brute force it because that's what often they do in the business world. But unfortunately, aviation is very unforgiving, and the outcome is often very binary when you get it really wrong. And even if you've got the parachute, it's great, but if you're trying to fly through a major storm, it doesn't matter. And one of the guys I know that passed away did just that, tried to force it through a storm in the middle of the night, and it was just a very bad ultimate decision. And that's one of the things that I sort of preach to a lot of people that we help find aircraft. From an entrepreneurial standpoint, is you have to treat this like a job, as in learn very well, but you can't treat this like you're going to win aviation, because it's just always a learning process, and it's going to kick your ass if you're not careful. And it's better to take that safety pilot with you if you're feeling tired or you got a lot on your mind. It's better to take the commercial flight if things aren't lining up.
But sometimes the logistics of those things just can't work. You got no other choice.
It's very hard, and that's where if it's too hard for that, and the holes in the Swiss cheese are sort of lining up, it's take the commercial flight. Like, I know one thing I always do when I've got to be there for a meeting is I always book a commercial flight as a backup, so I've always got that there, and probably 75 to 80% of the time I'm flying, but the other 20% of the time I'm cancelling and I'm taking commercial, or I'm driving wherever it might be. So,
what airplane do you fly?
I fly a Cessna Turbo Retractable 182.
There you go.
Low time, fairly new engine. It's a 1979, but it's been completely gutted, remodeled, and that sort of thing. So
Those turbos are awesome. You can get, is it pressurized to the cabin?
it's not pressurized, no, but I can fly it to 21,000 feet.
Wow,
Typically
awesome.
don't fly that high. It's got oxygen built in.
But it's efficient and fast up at that height.
Yeah, very. You can do, true airspeed in the high 170s and that sort of thing in when you're up that high, 170 knots. And yeah, thankfully it glides very far if the engine doesn't work, and it can pretty much land anywhere. But it's a good aircraft, and it's good for building complex retractable time, which you typically need for insurance to go and fly a Vision Jet or a turbine aircraft like a Meridian or TBM or something like that, or a PC-12 that's complex retractable.
Yeah, the Meridians are awesome. The TBMs, I can't. I'm 6'3", 200 pounds, and the TBM, like I can't. I have to sit in it like this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah,
Epic. I haven't gotten a chance to fly the Epic yet, but I love that airplane as well.
Yeah, that's a dream. That thing, 1,400 horsepower in front of you. It climbs at like 5,000 feet a minute. Took a ride in one not that long ago, and it was insane. I mean, it's not very comfortable when you're doing like a max performance takeoff for the passengers in the back. The people who are facing forward are like falling down into the back of the plane. But that's probably got the best cabin that I think I've sat in. I do like the TBM where the pilot door, the 900 series, just went flying.
Have you been in the Vision? Have you ridden a Vision yet?
I have not actually flown in a Vision. I've sat in a Vision, on the ramp, but haven't actually flown in a Vision. Flown in an SR22 turbo a lot, but not.
Yeah, the Vision is not very attractive because it's got that bug look, but the cabin is nice and wide and high.
Yeah.
So it's super, super comfortable for those two passenger seats right behind the pilot.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's, a lot of people think it's ugly, but I think it's kind of cool. It's like unique and that sort of thing. I think it's, there's definitely trade-offs with it, but a lot of people give it shit. But I think it's a pretty cool development in aviation, and I'm sure it'll just continue to get better over time.
It's almost not fair to call it. I think people get pissed because the people who buy it love to call it a jet and say I got a private jet.
Yeah.
It's not a jet. It's like a step below the PC-12 turboprop.
Yeah.
So like if you accept that it's got, if you got big kids, you can't ride it. If you got more than 3 adults, you can't really fly it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is what it is. It's a great share plane. It's fast and it doesn't carry much weight.
Yeah, that's it. Again, just the trade-offs. But a lot of people, as you say, just want to fly it because they want to say they fly a jet. I know a Cirrus sales guy that I'm friends with said he doesn't sell tons of them, but he uses them to sell tons of SR22s because ultimately people want to buy one to get to fly the jet. So, so that's very in line with what you're thinking there.
The problem with aviation is it's just gotten so unapproachable from a pricing standpoint just over the last 5 years.
Yep.
Like the MSRP on these Visions was what, 1.9 million when they came out?
It's nearly double basically, and it's even. My plane, I literally had someone call me yesterday and offer me double what I paid for the plane 2 years ago. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I guess the good thing is that they're going to keep making more of them. They're making good money, I would assume, right now. I think the Wi-Fi issue on these planes is absolutely horrific. It's so expensive. Gogo is ridiculous.
But now Starlink is...
But the FAA is not going to approve that, and they already lobbied Starlink to cut off airplane use. Does it work in your 172? Doesn't work in my Vision.
If you've got the Roam, you used to have the sort of $250 a month plan, but they just changed the plans. We used it in the Meridian on Sunday. That's at 200. We were doing 230 knots or something like that. Ground.
Want to hear a funny story? Is that when we bought our plane, we bought also Gogo Wi-Fi, and a couple of our kids' tablets were hooked up to it without us knowing it.
Oh no!
A couple flights in, we run out of like a year's worth of Wi-Fi in like 32 days.
No.
So we killed it because they literally burned through $25,000 worth of Wi-Fi in 1 month. That was the most frustrating thing ever. Just how ridiculous that is when Starlink works in an airplane up to 500 knots. So I don't know why but it's going to take 10 years for the FAA to
Yeah.
make it
I
viable.
mean, currently you can use it in a plane, and a lot of people will say it's it's legal because it's temporary. You can take it in and out, but who knows whether it'll stick around. But isn't that just highway robbery for GoGo to charge that sort of?
Yeah, so when you're burning, we at full, speed, 300 knots, 315, we're burning 68 gallons an hour at 31,000.
Yeah.
So $450 an hour. Oklahoma's cheaper because you guys got really cheap fuel out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we're $450 an hour for fuel on average. Our wing to wing warranty is $540 an hour. So then if you kind of count depreciation and like wear and tear on the airplane, I don't know what you would value that at, but yeah, we're with pilot. If you using 4 or 5 hours a day when you fly with that pilot, you're looking at under $1,500 an hour though to fly the Vision. So
Yeah, it's
still
pretty cost
still
effective.
half the price of a Phenom.
Yeah, that's kind of, or probably even if you've got a couple of contract pilots and stuff like that, you might even be way less than half. Might be more like a third, and the capital cost in the Phenom now is pretty high. But let's jump into the lightning round because we've chewed up a ton of your time, and I know you're super busy. But talk to me about what's a dream aviation destination for you, and somewhere where maybe you haven't flown yet, but you're like, I want to take the Vision Jet there.
The dream for me is having a personal plane that maybe does some business flights, but a personal plane that's an eight-seater or so, whether it be a Phenom or a PC-12, and load it up with a bunch of dudes and go play golf at amazing destinations. I think the problem with golf courses is that many of the best in the world are not anywhere near major cities.
Yeah. Yep.
So for me, I love having a golf trip on the books with people that I really like. I love the game of golf, and the dream for me is to be able to hop in the plane and go to amazing golf courses. Not there yet, though.
Love it. Well, if you get the Phenom, you'll have one. You can stop off in Oklahoma on your way out to Bandon, or I guess you won't go past here on your way to Sand Valley or something like that. But when you do stop in here, we'll take you out to Southern Hills and you can enjoy that.
Awesome.
That course is a great spot to be. You said your dream is ultimately the Phenom. When do you think you can get there? Have you got a timeline on what you're thinking, or is it more just like, hey,
no?
I'm trying
to stay reasonable within my financial means. I haven't been making serious money for more than a couple years.
Yeah.
So I do have shiny object syndrome though, where I look at these things and want them. And it's funny about airplanes is that if you'd have told me 10 years ago that when I retire I would have a Vision Jet, I would say, oh my gosh, that's like sign me up for that career. And now here I am, 35 years old with that airplane. And then when I see a PC-12, I get a little jealous. When I see a Phenom 300, I get a little jealous. And when you start seeing the Gulfstreams, it gets a little crazy. But no, I'm happy. Like it does what I need it to do.
Yeah.
And I feel very blessed to be able to use it for business and some personal things too. Nice
one. And tell me a little bit about what's next for you. You've got the book obviously coming out here shortly, and that's a huge kind of life achievement for someone to write a book. It's not easy. But what's next?
I'm gonna kind of focus on I got a lot of irons in the fire, and there's three companies that are really growing fast. It's somewhere.com, it's RE Cost Seg, and it's Bolt Storage. Yeah. And I have several other companies that I enjoy and I spend time on, and they have potential for sure, but those three are getting fairly large, up close to $1 million a month of revenue, if not surpassed. So I'm focused on those for now.
How cool. Well, that's awesome. And any final thoughts on how aviation has changed sort of your trajectory as an entrepreneur?
I don't know that it's changed my trajectory. It's definitely nice though, man. It really is nice to have. It's an asset. I look at it as an asset. If I was spending $3,000-$4,000 an hour to fly one, I don't know if I would be able to stomach that at this point in my career. But yeah, it's an amazing goal and amazing bit of freedom for sure.
Nice one. Now, people can find you on X at Sweaty Startup. Where else can they find you?
Yeah, order my book. We'll put the link down below. It's called The Sweaty Startup: How to Get Rich Doing Boring Things. But the most visited page on my website is a list of 200 plus sweaty startup business ideas that I have. So if you want to check that out, you can go to sweatystartup.com/ideas.
Awesome. I'll add that link in the show notes so people can go there and find a whole lot of boring, unsexy businesses to make a whole lot of money so they can buy themselves a plane.
Thanks so much for having me, Simon.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate your time and look forward to having you out here to play golf.
Hey, thanks for flying with us today. If you're getting value from these conversations with other pilot entrepreneurs and executives, do me a really quick favor. Hit that subscribe button or the follow button, depending on what app you're using, so you'll never miss another episode. And if you've got an extra minute and you loved us, drop us a 5-star review. Those reviews help other aviation-minded business folk find us, and honestly, they really just make my day. What about you? Have you got a story about using your plane to grow your business, or maybe someone you know? Well, shoot me a message on X at Simon G. Turner or at the Chief Executive Aviator podcast, or pop me an email, simon@turneraircraft.com. See you on the next Chief Executive Aviator.